okay, this is pretest 4, and it brings in the concepts of inequalities. And you might see these inequalities as being done a little bit differently than maybe you've done them in the past. So if you're successful with inequalities, you kind of know how to solve inequalities, then um, probably just keep on doing what you're doing. That'll be fine. The reason we do them with the method you're going to see here is to sort of demonstrate uh, something that happens in the calculus, and this sort of mocks it. So uh, it's good preparation for the calculus, we felt. And the technique basically involves changing the inequalities. You can see in question number 1 right here to an equality. Notice the greater than sign has been removed and replaced by an equality. Then I just continue as I would with any normal equation using all the regular algebraic properties and getting a solution of x equals negative 3. Now, what that tells me is negative 3 has some kind of relevance to the solution to this problem. And so I put on a number line an open circle, right, for negative 3. And open circle because we don't have equality here. This is not greater than or equal to. It's purely greater than. So the number negative 3 itself does not work, and so we leave that as an open circle. And now I'm just going to test numbers on each side of negative 3. So I'm going to test the number, a number bigger than negative 3. I'm going to test 0. And I test it in the original inequality. So I replace the variable every time I see it by the test number, in this case, 0. And of course, that gives me 0 minus 2. And what I'm posing is that greater than negative 11? So is negative 2 greater than negative 11? Is that a true or a false condition? Negative 2 bigger than negative 11? Well, it is. That's a true condition, right? It's a true condition because negative 2 is to the right of negative 11. So numbers in that interval, numbers above negative 3, just by testing that one number, I know that all the numbers above there will work. And so you would shade it and you'd arrow it indicating it goes on forever in that direction. Whereas if you test a number less than negative 3, for instance, if we test negative 4, we get, again, substituting into the original inequality that they gave us, 3 times minus 4 minus 2. Is it greater than negative 11? Well, that's negative 12 minus 2. Is that greater than negative 11? So is negative 14 greater than negative 11? And that is a false condition. Okay, negative 14 is not bigger than negative 11. Negative 14 is to the left of negative 11. So numbers in that region will not work. Okay, so my solution, pictorially, my solution is from negative 3 exclusive to plus infinity. Now, just to demonstrate how to do this with the virtual tools, I brought up WebAssign here. And this should be basically what you see. If you don't see this, then you probably have an outdated browser. You need to upgrade your browser to maybe Google Chrome or Firefox or something like that. There have been noted problems in versions of Internet Explorer too. So you might want to think about switching your browser if you can't see this number line when you're in WebAssign. Now, what I've done is I've answered the question. I got negative. I want to shade everything negative 3, exclusive of negative 3, and greater. And right now I'm just working with this selection tool right here. And so I'm going to pick negative 3, right? So let's suppose you have a little trouble with it. And, you click somewhere and you didn't mean to click there. You wanted negative 3 and you clicked at negative 2.5, right? Well, you can just hit the trash button and it'll get rid of it. It asks you if you want to get rid of it. You say, yeah, I want to get rid of it. So it takes a little bit of practice, but without without too much practice, you should get fairly adept at it. And I just tap in there. There is a tolerance. It doesn't have to be exactly on negative 3. It has to be, I think, within 1/10 either way, and it's good. It'll count it as correct. Um, Now, That is a closed-in circle. I don't want a closed-in circle because I don't want to include negative 3. I want to exclude it. So you can either use the white circle, which is the open circle, okay, or you could use your left parenthesis, right? Either one of those symbols will work, okay? So you identify all the numbers you're concerned about. In this case, I was only concerned about negative 3, okay? And now I want to shade above negative 3. So you go over here and you grab the draw tool right here, right? And with the draw tool, you can see whichever side of negative 3 I'm on, it will shade, right? So I'll go over here on the side I want, and I just tap, and it shades it in there. And then just to show you that this works, if I slide down here and tell it that I want to submit that for testing, you will see I get the green check mark right there, which indicates that that's a correct solution. Okay, so that's how that works. And so we'll uh, go back to our notebook here and solve these others. And so not to worry too much about those virtual tools. If you can see them, they get pretty easy to use. I've used the same technique here on number 2. I've got 3x is less than 9x plus 4. I change it to equality and solve it and get x equals negative 2/3. Okay. Now, negative 2/3 is my focus number. So on a number line, I would put negative 2/3. Right? Only one focus number. Again, pure inequality, so I don't shade it in. I don't fill that in. All right. And now I'm just going to test a number on each side of it. Now, a number bigger than negative 2/3 would be like x equals 0. So I plug in 0 for x every time I see it. 3 times 0, 9 times 0. And so I get 0 is less than 0 plus 4. So I get 0 is less than 4. And that's certainly true. That's certainly true. So I would shade that interval. I shade everything from negative 2/3 up. And you probably already suspect it, but when we test the other interval, it isn't going to work, right? If I try a number down here, like negative 1, make sure you get a number in the interval, right? Negative 1 is below negative 2/3. So I got 3 times negative 1. And the question we're asking is that less than 9 times negative 1 plus 4? And that gives me negative 3 is less than negative 9 plus 4. So I get negative 3 is less than negative 5. And so that question is negative 3 below negative 5? Is negative 3 to the left of negative 5? And that's a false condition. Okay? And so there's your solution. All right? Now, the next one has a little pitfall in it that I want to demonstrate for you. So take a look at the solution there for number 3. And you should find everything there, I think, to your liking. Right? It's a quadratic equation. So we factor it and set our factors equal to 0 and get x equals 3 and x equals 2. Now, if you use the number line, here's a number 1 pitfall on this if you use this technique, right? X equals 3, x equals 2. See this happen all the time. Students load up their number line like this, the 3 and the 2. And what's sort of wrong with that picture? Well, they're out of order. They're out of numeric order, right? 3 should be to the right of 2. Okay, so but just because of the way I factored it, I happen to put the x minus 3 factor on the left, the x minus 2 factor on the right. Just because of the way I factored it, we ended up with the numbers out of order from left to right. Okay, so you want to be watching for that. And what I'm going to do is just erase those, and then I'll go back and put in the numbers in the correct order. And just as I did in the other problems, I'm going to show a test number for each. Now down here on the left, I guess I'll just use 0 because that's probably the easiest. 0 squared minus 5 times 0 plus 6. Is that less than or equal to 0? Right? 0 minus 0 plus 6. Is it less than or equal to 0? Is 6 less than or equal to 0? False condition. Right? So numbers down there don't work. That interval is not going to work. Try a number bigger than 3, right? So a number bigger than 3, that would be like x equals 4, right? It's a test number. We're going to have 4 squared minus 5 times 4 plus 6. Is that less than or equal to 0? Okay, so I got 16 minus 20 plus 6. Is that less than or equal to 0? So that's 22 minus 20. Is that less than or equal to 0? Is 2 less than 0 or equal to 0? No, those numbers don't work. Okay. Now, also remember on this one, since we do have equality, we have equals there. These can actually be shaded in. Those numbers do work this time. Make sure that makes sense to you. All right. And then to check a number in between here, well, how about 2 and 5/10? How about 2.5? You can use a fraction if you want to. And so we got 2 and 5/10 squared minus 5 times 2 and 5/10 plus 6. And is that less than or equal to 0? Well, that gives us 625 minus 5 times 2.5 is 12.5 plus 6. Is that less than or equal to 0? Well, that gives us 12.25 minus 12.5. Is that less than or equal to 0? So we get negative 25 hundredths less than or equal to 0. That's a true condition. So numbers in that interval work. Numbers from 2 to 3, inclusive this time, will work. All right. So just to show you how this works, if we go back to the move on to number 3, right, and do a test preview to show you what it looks like. Okay, there's our number line. So again, I wanted 2 and 3, and they're on my number line. So I take my selection tool and I try to put it over 2, but if you mess it up, you can always move it. Now that is a filled in circle, which you could keep. That would work because remember we want 2 to 3 inclusive. But if I wanted to, I can use the square bracket technology too. You got either format available. And then I'm going to move over here to 3, right? Tap that and be consistent. I'll use the close bracket. Then you grab your draw tool to shade between them. That's shaded. And then once you're happy with your answer, you submit it. Okay. And you can see that comes out as correct. Okay. So that's how those virtual tools work. Not really not too difficult. Um, one more in this video we'll throw in, and hopefully you get the hang of these virtual tools now. So that'll make sense to you. Number 4 actually represents, remember, 2 inequalities written as 1 here. So we've got negative 1 is less than 2x plus 5, and we've got 2x plus 5 is less than or equal to 3. Well, again, I'm going to recommend that you solve these two things as if they were equalities, because I think that'll make it easier for you. All right. And so x equals negative 3 is one of my focus numbers. Bring the 5 over and subtract it, divide by the 2. Right. Same way you do with any algebra. And so again, we throw out the inequalities, just one less thing to worry about, right? And then, so 2x equals negative 2, so x equals negative 1. get them in the right order on a number line. Okay, negative 3 is going to be to the left of negative 1. And then, just in the original inequality that they gave you, test a number. Now, I'm going to plug in a number bigger than negative 1. I'm going to plug in 0 here, right? And when I test that number, we should find out negative 1 less than, that gives me 0 plus 5, less than equal to 3. So I get negative 1 is less than 5. Well, that's true. But is it less than or equal to 3? And remember, the whole or both, because of the word and, both inequalities have to be true. So numbers up there do not work. Okay. Now, what about the number negative 1 itself? Because that side of the inequality was allowed, we have equality there, that's going to work. And then if you try a number in the middle between negative 3 and negative 1, kind of obviously use the integer negative 2 and put it back in the original inequality, we get negative 1 less than 2 times negative 2 plus 5. And then we're asking, is that less than or equal to 3? We get negative 1 is less than negative 4 plus 5, less than or equal to 3. Okay, so negative 1 is less than 1, which is true, which is less than or equal to 3, which is true. So that gives us a true statement. So numbers in there will work. Okay. And then a number below negative 3 will not work. Like if you try negative 4, you have negative 1 less than 2 times negative 4 plus 5 less than equal to 3. You get negative 1 less than negative 8 plus 5 less than 3. Negative 1 is less than negative 3. Well, no, it's not, so it fails right there. Less than equal to 3. Okay, so even though the negative 3 is less than 3, negative 1 is not less than 3. Numbers in that interval don't work. So in the virtual tools here, you're either going to have the open circle chosen or you're going to have a parenthesis chosen. And then on the negative 1, you're either going to have the filled in circle chosen or you're going to have the square bracket chosen. And then you're just going to use the draw tool to shade between those regions. Okay, so that's questions 1 through 4, and check the other videos for the questions from 5 to 10.